Good afternoon and good morning and good evening to our various attendees from around the world. My name is Mike Zuckerman. I'll be sharing a brief overview of our topic today, business performance management. And we have other attendees, Joseph Negley, our senior systems engineering manager that will also demonstrate the product, as well as Mr. Joseph Gaddis, our manager for EMEA, and other supporting members from the SAP team. NOAA manufactures SAP UEM by NOAA, which is sold by SAP around the world. And we've had very, very good success and good fortune with the product so far, installing the product around the world, hundreds of licensees, and many of the largest customers in the world. There are many different technologies today that use the term user experience management. It's perhaps a bit overused. And I think what you'll see today is that SAP UEM by NOAA, or SAP UEM, brings you very unique capabilities that will enable you to leverage business performance positively and solve problems that you've been unable to solve. The technology wrapped around SAP UEM enables capabilities which are very special and very unique to the SAP environment. And that's the topic of our discussion today. If you take a close look at everything in your IT data center, you'll see that so much of it is instrumented today at the infrastructure. The networks, the storage, the processors, the applications. We have RAID, we have redundancy, we have an incredible set of instrumentation to see what's happening in that enterprise at the infrastructure level. But yet the business performance, in aggregate, the performance of my user community through the application software has very little known about it. And enterprise class user experience management, such as SAP UEM, gives you a view to the network, storage, and application performance at the desktop that is unique, and then gives you a view to business performance management at the desktop, which is unique. And this data allows you to start to solve problems that were previously unsolvable and drive very considerable value for your enterprise. So let's take a look at what this means. The best way to illustrate this is to ask a few questions. And when I ask these questions of CIOs or line of business executives, the response is almost always the same. And I'll ask about system error and business performance error, business process error. And almost without exception, every CIO will say, well, we really don't know what the answer is in terms of percentage. We can only see a certain number of system errors. And then over time, from our help desk operations, we start to get a sense of user errors. If you take a closer look at the answers based upon our data in delivering our technology globally before we remediate performance, we find that roughly 8.4% of all of the errors within a global enterprise or a mid-tier enterprise are infrastructure errors. And usually this data is a significant surprise to the CIO or the line of business executive. They really don't have any basis to understand these numbers given the technology they're using today. And so they're very surprised by the data. They're more surprised to understand that 9 out of 10 of the errors are in fact business process performance. And as we start to share the picture for how you can see this data, the implications of what it can mean to the enterprise become quite profound and significant. To look at it differently, think of the status quo in that organization today for line of business or the CIO. Everything in the infrastructure is instrumented very, very completely. Everything is visible at each discrete level of performance. But in terms of the enterprise view, the front line begins and ends with what comes through the IT service desk. If you ask this CIO today, how many problems do you have in your enterprise in the last 8 hours? The best state-of-the-art answer would be, I have 1,200 errors that were reported to my IT service desk. I have, of those 1,200, I believe 400 are system error, and it will take a week or two for the other 800 to be classified and resolved. And I also have 100 alerts from my APM software that maps to my infrastructure. And that is the state-of-the-art answer. There are 1,200 things that hit my IT service desk. The view of the world that you will have with SAP UEM really is part of SAP's extended vision for where the enterprise can go. When you ask that question of a successful SAP customer like McKesson, the CIO of McKesson knows that there are 11,000 errors within my enterprise today, of which 1,200 were reported, and 9,000 or 10,000 were not reported. And now you start to see the opportunity. The technology brings to bear a view to information that has been unavailable before. And this information starts to let you address problems that have heretofore been inaddressable, problems that were unsolvable, and problems that the best you could do is treat with continued funding because there was no better way to solve it. Most of the time at the service desk, you're looking for information. When the customer calls and they have a problem, you are in react mode. You must diagnose their issue. You must talk to them about the nature of the problem. And that first set of problems around the IT service desk is very common to every major enterprise deployment. Using SAP UEM, at the time of the phone call, you can see everything those users may have done that you need to see to diagnose their problem. And you can start to get a sense of the magnitude of the problem. So first, you'll be able to see exactly what the problem is, system error or business performance error. And then you'll be able to say, how many other business problems just like this one are happening in the enterprise right now? So your view to business performance is truly real-time and does not depend on the IT service desk for identification. The IT service desk can use the tool to speed the normal operational process in IT service, and then to move to something new and exciting, which is true proactive service. Another major area for opportunity to solve problems that have been unsolvable is in application support. And the biggest area by far that customers are sensitive to is that involving change management and user acceptance testing. Every CIO will tell you that rolling out a new release is a process fraught with risk. No matter what you do, during the first week or 30 days or 6 weeks or 2 months, you have problems that you could not anticipate. And sometimes the magnitude and impact of these problems is traumatic. The worst meeting for a CIO to have is with a line of business executive at the end of the quarter 2 months into using a new release where the line of business executive says, I cannot book our business and process transactions for this quarter because the new release has so many problems in it. And the reality is that today you're flying blind. You're unable to see until those problems hit the IT service desk. With SAP UEM, you can see instantaneously the state of the organization and understand the severity and location and impact of problems throughout your application user community. You can even start to identify the economic impact because you can see the problem and you can see the time impact, and you can say, well, if I use 50 euros an hour or 100 euros an hour against all this business process impact, I think this cost me 40,000 euros today because we haven't fixed this problem. And that's a very new perspective. Training and education is another significant opportunity where you can now target training to the business process problems that are impacting your organization. It makes no sense when you have this technology and this view to give everybody the same training the same way. In fact, you can start to understand where you need to provide special training to large groups of business process users to remediate difficulties. And also note that these difficulties for business process are not necessarily anything involving the user. They may be custom applications that are poorly designed, custom transactions, and perhaps errors in master data, all of which now are far more easily identifiable and remediated. Of course, when we talk to line of business executives, the big application area is adoption. I want to realize 100% of the value of my investment in SAP. I want to realize the full benefit of my SAP business case. And hence, we do work closely with value engineering to understand the positive potential impact when working with you and your team. Customer successes have happened across a broad variety of areas. Kraft, a major food and beverage supplier, on a global basis, experienced strong operating cost reductions across the board, which for them have netted to millions of dollars in operating expense improvement. Most interesting was that the satisfaction rating of their internal user community improved significantly as a result of deploying the technology. McKesson, the organization I mentioned earlier, was not realizing the best value for their SAP investment, and by deploying the technology has found very broad savings across all of those areas we described earlier. This year, we would estimate McKesson's savings to still be in the many millions of dollars per year in operating benefit. So these sorts of returns on investment are quite remarkable, and we see them across our customer base. Merck, another very large pharmaceutical in production with over 70,000 users, is seeing annual benefits that approach $3 million. These are very, very substantial numbers. A more interesting use case is one by Rockwell Collins because they decided only to deploy in the area of targeted training. And even with that narrow, well-defined focus, saw a very significant return on investment for their organization. And Rockwell Collins is typical of the aerospace customers that we have. So you start to really want to see how compelling can this be for me? And it really leads to, what do I do to understand if SAP UEM can benefit my organization? What do I need to know to get to the next step. The normal process working with SAP resources and team members is to really think about a discovery session where we work with you to understand briefly the areas of opportunity for your organization. And from that discovery session, as the opportunity is presented, value engineering would become available to support the determination of potential ROI. And this is an actual ROI set of data where we've anonymized the customer, certainly, to protect the information and change some of the numbers, but you can see their analysis. Similarly, I pulled another screen from another analysis, and we have set after set of this sample actual data, some in dollars, some in euros. Your SAP team has access to perhaps half a dozen of these that have been restructured slightly so that you can see the sample data. But these are the sorts of results that should be achievable by your organization. The more seats you have, the more compelling the data starts to become. If you have thousands of seats for SAP users, the annual benefits are tremendously compelling, and yet you still have the benefit of SAP's vision for business performance for the enterprise, the view to the data that supports it, and ultimately realization of the value, the business case for your SAP world. The technology, as I lead towards the demonstration, you'll see is very, very simple. At the basic level, we connect to everything in your SAP world pretty much without exception. Even the custom Z-code transactions, if they are built to SAP's framework, are automatically picked up by the technology set and brought into the suite. Every transaction, every screen, and every button, whether you're using NetWeaver, GUI, SAP CRM, or even you want to understand the performance of your business process using business objects, which is in fact our reporting dashboard. It's all there. This is in contrast to most IT tools where we tend to think of scripting a transaction. This is very different. It comes out of the box with everything, even the customizations that you build or that you have done, and then takes you to step 2, which is discovery. Discovery is now finding the opportunity in this data to create positive action, areas of opportunity that can take you to return on investment. And then, of course, manage, which is taking you through the process to harvest that return on investment successfully. SAP UEM is an analytics framework, a powerful analytics framework that gives you a view to all of the infrastructure performance as experienced by the business at the desktops, and then a view to the performance of the business as the software is used. The infrastructure performance data is mostly unique in some capacity, and the business performance data is absolutely unique. No one but SAP UEM will be able to show you information about that 91% of the error. And as it turns out, that 91% of the error is the greatest available percentage of remediation ongoing so that you can secure all of your SAP business case. There is considerable functionality in the product that Mr. Negley will show off during the demo, but it gives you context for zeroing in on specific categories of problem. So when you get a call to the help desk, you can find every other instance of that problem and its severity and know where and when and how it's been happening. You can also understand the state of your transactions in a short window of time, in a comparative window of time. And because all of this data flows into the analytics dashboard, it's business objects BI. So that means that data can be merged with other information to build out the dashboards that you need to drive the value for your organization. In terms of architecture, it's pretty simple. The architecture is built around desktop agents. We have deployed many of these desktop agents, and desktop agents turn out to be the only way to understand the performance that a user is experiencing. Online, offline, certainly offline it's the only way. GUI, NetWeaver, many of the thick clients being used could take half a second to a second to fill the screen. Yet any kind of centralized reporting technology will not see that time delay. Desktop agents also understand the transaction performance and all the errors that go with it, and are uniquely positioned to scale the architecture between on-premise, cloud, and mobile device. And in all of these areas, we are partnering long-term and short-term with the engineering teams at SAP to maintain consistency between this architecture as a reference architecture of choice and SAP's strategic direction. We're going to move now to share the demonstration. And as a last slide, I'd like to look at implementation here as a transition. The number one question that we seem to get is, how will this impact everything that I'm doing? I don't want a high-risk project. I see the reward, but I just don't have the time to tie up people and take risk with my infrastructure right now. And the answer is that the architecture for SAP UEM totally is independent of the back end. It's all outside of your infrastructure and only touches it by virtue of the desktop agent that understands performance at that desktop for the business and the infrastructure. So there's no impact to your back end. The technology is very scalable and automated, and today has been deployed or targeted for deployment to hundreds of thousands of users, many hundreds of thousands of users. Finally, the dashboard of choice, of course, is the SAP standard business objects, and that's all ready for your deployment as well. So I'm now going to introduce again Joe Negley, who will share a view to the technology, and then we'll support your questions as possible. Thank you.